The station was never meant to be lived in for long. It floated alone near the edge of a yellow star, far from trade routes and far from help. It was a research outpost, cold and quiet, built to observe alien biology from a safe distance. Humans called it Station EOS 17. To the wider galaxy, it barely existed. Ethan Hale had been on the station for 6 months, and he was counting the days until his contract ended. He was not a soldier, not a diplomat. He was an engineer. Humans sent engineers where things were expected to break. And EOS 17 broke often. The station was old by galactic standards, held together by patched metal, reused circuits, and human stubbornness. The only other permanent resident was Lirai. She was not human. Lirai belonged to the Kethari, a tall, silver-skinned species known for their sharp minds and strict traditions. The Kethari were respected across the galaxy, but feared their own biology. Every 12 cycles, their bodies entered a phase called the renewal season. Other species translated it poorly, calling it mating season. But that word failed to explain the truth. During renewal, Kethari biology became unstable. Hormones flooded their systems. Pheromones leaked into the air. Neural pathways rewired themselves. Without proper care, a Kethari could lose control, lose memory, or even die. Because of this, Kethari law demanded isolation. No contact, no visitors. No assistance from other species. Lyrae had been raised partly among humans after her mother bonded with a human diplomat. That legal bond made Ethan her stepbrother in human records, though there was no blood connection and no emotional closeness. They were polite strangers forced into shared space. Ethan respected her distance. Lyrae respected his silence. That balance ended the day the lockdown began. The station's central system announced it in a flat voice. Renewal containment protocol activated. All exits sealed. External communication disabled. Ethan froze in the maintenance corridor, tool in hand. He stared at the blinking red lights as the heavy blast doors slid shut. His first thought was simple and human. That was not scheduled. He ran. By the time he reached the central habitat ring, Lyrae was already there. She stood very still, long fingers pressed against the metal table. Her silver skin had darkened slightly, thin lines glowing faint blue along her neck and arms. Her eyes were focused, but strained. "It has begun early," she said. Ethan swallowed.
How early? 3 weeks. The number hit hard. 3 weeks meant the station was unprepared.
Medical supplies were not stocked. Atmospheric filters were not calibrated. And worst of all, the station was not rated for mixed species renewal exposure. Ethan forced himself to breathe. Panic never helped. Humans had learned that long ago. "Okay," he said. "We work the problem." Lyrae looked at him sharply. "You do not understand. Galactic law forbids your presence during this time." "Galactic law isn't here," Ethan replied. "We are." She turned away, clearly struggling. "If Kethari authorities learn you remained, there will be consequences. If we open the doors," Ethan said, "we both die. Star radiation alone would cook us in seconds." Silence filled the room, broken only by the low hum of the station. Finally, Lyrae spoke.
"Then you must stay." It was not a request. It was a sentence.
The first day passed quietly, but tension hung in the air like static. Ethan monitored systems while Lyrae isolated herself in the medical wing. Sensors showed rising levels of unknown compounds in the air. The filters were not designed for Kethari pheromones, and certainly not at these levels. By the second day, things began to fail. Lights flickered. Data screens glitched. The station's artificial intelligence restarted twice without command. Ethan stared at the diagnostics in disbelief. That shouldn't be possible. When he traced the fault, he found no mechanical error. The systems were responding as if exposed to strong electromagnetic interference, but there was none. Then he checked the air composition. His stomach tightened. The compounds released by Liray's body were interacting with the station's electronics. The pheromones were not just biological, they were reactive. They interfered with circuits, sensors, even AI logic layers. Alien engineers had never considered that possibility. Their technology was designed around clean environments and predictable biology. Human tech was not. Ethan spent hours rerouting systems, replacing smart components with older, simpler hardware. Where the AI failed, he installed manual controls. Where sensors glitched, he trusted physical readings. By the third day, Liray could barely stand. Ethan found her sitting on the floor, back against the wall, breathing slowly. Her eyes were unfocused, and the glowing lines on her skin pulsed irregularly. "Your heart rate is unstable," Ethan said softly. She laughed weakly. "Of course it is. This is why we isolate." "Your people isolate alone?" he asked.
Yes, she said. We are taught that survival is a personal trial. That's
rough. It is tradition. Ethan frowned, but said nothing. Humans had traditions, too. Some of them were just as cruel. As hours passed, the station grew worse. The air grew thick. The temperature shifted without command. The AI shut down completely. Liray's condition deteriorated fast. "Ethan," she said quietly, "if I lose control, you must leave this section." "I'm not leaving," he said. "You could die. So could you." She studied him through half-lidded eyes. "Humans are reckless. We prefer the word adaptable. By the fourth day, rescue was no longer an option. A distant Kethari vessel attempted contact, but protocol prevented docking. Their message was brief and cold. Containment must remain sealed. Survival is uncertain. Honor the process. Ethan slammed his fist into the console after the transmission ended. "They're just gonna let you die," he said. "They believe suffering strengthens us," Liray replied. "Sometimes it does." Ethan did not agree, but again, he stayed quiet. Instead, he worked. He modified the air circulation to dilute the reactive compounds without fully removing them. He used human emergency masks, adjusting filters with duct tape and scavenged mesh. He rerouted power through thick analog cables, ignoring efficiency. The station looked ugly by the end of it. Exposed wires. Manual levers. Handwritten labels. But it stayed alive. By the sixth day, something strange became clear. Ethan was unaffected. The compounds in the air caused hallucinations and neural overload in most species. Liray's body was fighting itself, but Ethan, his heart rate was normal. His mind was clear. His only complaint was a mild headache. Human evolution had never aimed for perfection. It had aimed for survival and chaos. On the seventh day, Liray collapsed. Ethan caught her before she hit the floor. He carried her to the medical bed, adjusting restraints not to trap her, but to prevent injury. He monitored her breathing, her neural patterns, her temperature. Hours passed. When she finally opened her eyes, she looked at him with confusion. "You are still here," she said. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "I figured someone had to be." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You should not be able to function in this environment." Ethan gave a tired smile. Humans are bad at following expectations. Outside the station, the star burned on, uncaring. Inside, something quiet and important was happening. The galaxy believed renewal was something to be endured alone. A human was proving that belief wrong. And this was only the beginning. The station did not feel the same anymore. Ethan noticed it the moment he woke up on the 8th day. The air had weight to it, not heavy enough to choke him, but thick enough to press against his skin. Lights no longer flickered. Instead, they dimmed and brightened slowly, like something breathing. The low hum of the station had changed pitch, uneven and tired. The outpost was not just braking, it was reacting. Ethan ran a systems check using an old handheld scanner. Most of the advanced interfaces were still offline. What remained was human-built backup hardware, designed decades earlier and considered obsolete by galactic standards. Now it was the only thing keeping the station alive. Power levels were unstable but holding. Life support was running at 60% efficiency. Air filtration was jury-rigged and unpredictable. Ethan rubbed his face and exhaled. "You're holding together," he muttered to the station. "So don't quit now." In the medical wing, Leroy slept restlessly. Her body temperature fluctuated, sometimes rising sharply, sometimes dropping low enough to worry him. The glowing lines on her skin were brighter now, pulsing faster, spreading across her shoulders and down her spine. According to Cathari medical files, this was the most dangerous stage. During this phase, many Cathari lost higher reasoning. Some suffered memory collapse. Others entered violent neural feedback loops that could permanently damage their minds. That was why they were left alone. Ethan hated that logic. He checked her readings again, then adjusted the dampeners he had built from scavenged parts. They were crude, using sound waves and low-frequency vibrations to stabilize her nervous system. No alien engineer would have approved them. But they worked. For now. On the 9th day, the station sent a warning tone. "Atmospheric imbalance detected," the system announced weakly. Ethan sprinted to the control panel. Oxygen levels were dropping in one section while spiking in another. The reactive compounds in the air were shifting again, changing how they bonded with metals and circuits. He rerouted airflow manually, sealing off half the habitat ring. The station groaned as pressure doors slammed shut. Leray woke moments later, gasping. Ethan was at her side instantly. "Easy. Breathe slow." She clutched the edge of the bed, eyes wide. "The voices," she whispered. "They are louder. What voices? The ancestral echoes," she said. "During renewal, our minds open to memory layers." "It is overwhelming." Ethan frowned. "You're hearing your ancestors?" "Yes. Thousands of them. All at once." "That sounds like a nightmare." "It is," she said quietly. Ethan adjusted the stabilizers again, lowering the input. "If it gets worse, tell me." She hesitated. "Why do you care?" The question caught him off guard. He paused, then answered honestly. "Because you're here, and because leaving you alone feels wrong." She studied him for a long moment, then looked away. "Humans are strange." He smiled faintly. "We get that a lot." By the 10th day, external sensors detected movement. A Cathari observation ship had returned, maintaining distance. They did not attempt contact. They did not offer aid. They simply watched. Ethan noticed the scan pulses hitting the station. "They're checking if you're still alive," he muttered. Liraye's response was bitter. "They are waiting to record the outcome." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're not an experiment." "During renewal," she said, "we all are. That night the station lost artificial gravity in 2 sections." Ethan floated helplessly for several seconds before grabbing a handhold. Alarms blared. Tools drifted through the air like slow-moving debris. He cursed under his breath and kicked off toward the gravity core. The cause was immediate and alarming. The pheromonal compounds had reacted with the gravity stabilizers, disrupting their microfield generators. Alien designs depended on precise conditions. Human designs assumed failure. Ethan bypassed the stabilizers entirely, switching to a mechanical rotation system. The station would spin slowly, creating gravity through motion. It was inefficient, crude, outdated. But it worked. When gravity returned, Ethan collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. His muscles ached. His head throbbed. He laughed quietly. "Still here," he said. By the 11th day, exhaustion caught up with him. Humans could adapt, but they were not endless. Ethan's hands shook as he replaced another burned circuit. His thoughts wandered. His reactions slowed. He forced himself to eat nutrient paste even when his stomach rebelled. Lerai noticed.
"You are weakening," she said.
"So are you," he replied. "That is expected from me," she said. "Not for you," Ethan shrugged. "Nobody told my body that." She watched him closely. "Why are humans like this?" "Like what? Resistant?" she said. "You live among poisons, chaos, and uncertainty. You should not survive." Ethan thought about Earth. About storms, diseases, wars, and environments that killed quickly if you made mistakes. "We don't survive because it's safe," he said. "We survive because it isn't." On the 12th day, Leray screamed. The sound ripped through the station, sharp and raw. Ethan dropped what he was doing and ran. She was thrashing on the medical bed, body arching as glowing lines flared bright white. Alarms blared as her neural readings spiked off the scale. Okay, Ethan said, forcing calm into his voice. "I'm here." She clawed at the restraints, eyes unfocused. "Make it stop." Ethan increased the stabilizer output, then stopped himself. Too much would burn her nervous system. Too little would let it tear itself apart. He made a decision no alien doctor would have approved. He connected the stabilizer directly to his own neural monitor. The feedback slammed into him instantly. Pain flared behind his eyes. His vision blurred. Strange impressions brushed his mind, memories not his own, echoes of emotions too old to name. He gritted his teeth and held on. If Lerai was drowning in memory, he would anchor her. Minutes passed, or hours. Time lost meaning. Slowly, the reading stabilized. Lerai's breathing evened out. Ethan collapsed into a chair, shaking. When she finally opened her eyes, tears traced down her silver skin. "You shared it," she said weakly. "No one has ever shared it?" Ethan wiped sweat from his face. "Seemed unfair for you to handle it alone." She stared at him in silence. Something changed in her expression. Outside, the observation ship adjusted its orbit. Sensors aboard it recorded something impossible. The human should have been unconscious. Instead, he was still alive. Still functioning. Still adapting. The galaxy had classified humans as fragile. That classification was beginning to crack. And the renewal was far from over. The 13th day began with silence. No alarms, no system voice. No distant hum of machinery struggling to survive. For the first time since the lockdown began, the station felt still. Too still. Ethan noticed it as soon as he opened his eyes. The lights were frozen at a steady glow. The air felt balanced, almost calm. His first instinct was not relief. It was suspicion. Stations did not heal themselves. He pushed off from the bunk and floated for a moment before gravity pulled him back down. The rotation system he had installed was still working, but barely. Every step felt heavier than the last, like the station was resisting movement. He checked the handheld scanner. The numbers made no sense. The reactive compounds in the air had stabilized on their own. That should not have been possible. Ethan walked quickly toward the medical wing. Lirai was awake, sitting upright on the bed. The glowing lines on her skin had dimmed slightly, no longer flaring out of control. Her breathing was steady, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "You feel it too," she said. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "The station's quiet." "This is the eye of the storm," Lirai said. Ethan frowned. "You're sure?" She nodded, slowly. "Renewal does not rise forever. It coils. It gathers. Then it breaks." That was not comforting. By mid-cycle, the station's systems began behaving strangely. Panels activated without command. Doors opened and closed on their own. The remaining sensors fed contradictory data, as if the station could not decide what state it was in. Ethan traced the signals and felt a chill. The pheromonal compounds were no longer just interfering with electronics. They were integrating. Alien technology relied on adaptive systems, self-correcting logic, and semi-organic circuitry. The compounds interacted with those layers, rewriting response patterns, forcing the station to behave in ways it was never designed to. In simple terms, the station was learning. And not in a good way. Ethan shut down another automated subsystem and replaced it with a manual switch. Then another. And another. Soon the control room looked less like a modern research station and more like an old human submarine. Levers, gouges, dials, mechanical feedback. Ugly. Reliable. Lirai watched him work. "You are stripping away intelligence?" "I'm keeping the wrong kind from growing," Ethan said. On the 14th day, the Kethari observation ship attempted communication again. This time, the message was longer. "Station EOS 17, confirm biological status. Scans indicate abnormal survival metrics." "This contradicts renewal models!" Ethan laughed bitterly. "You don't say!" Lirai stared at the display. "They are confused." "Good," Ethan replied. Confusion means they're paying attention. The Kethari ship continued scanning, pushing deeper, using more invasive methods. Ethan felt the station shudder as energy waves passed through its hull. "Tell them to stop," Ethan said. "They will not," Lirai replied. "Knowledge is more important than comfort." Ethan clenched his fists. That's not knowledge. That's cowardice with paperwork. On the 15th day, the storm broke. It started with sound. A low vibration rolled through the station, not loud enough to trigger alarms, but strong enough to be felt in the bones. Loose tools rattled. The air itself seemed to hum. Lirai doubled over, gasping.
"It's accelerating," she said.
"The final convergence." Ethan grabbed his scanner. Her neural activity was spiking again, faster than before. Heart rate unstable. Memory overload rising. And then something new appeared. A feedback loop between her neural signals and the station's systems. Ethan stared at the readout in disbelief. The station was responding to her. Lights brightened in rhythm with her pulse. Temperature shifted with her breathing. The gravity fluctuated when her emotions spiked. The station was no longer just affected by renewal. It was participating. "If that loop completes," Ethan said slowly, "it could burn your mind out." Lirai's voice trembled. "Or merge it? That's worse," Ethan said instantly. She met his eyes. For humans, perhaps? Ethan shook his head. No species should be forced to become part of a machine. The vibration intensified. Systems began overloading again, faster than Ethan could shut them down. The station's semi-organic AI tried to reboot, pulling power and control away from the manual systems. Ethan made a choice. He walked to the core interface and pulled the primary alien logic matrix free. Alarms screamed. Lights went dark. Emergency power kicked in. The station lurched violently. For several terrifying seconds, gravity failed completely. Ethan slammed into a wall, air leaving his lungs in a painful rush. He barely managed to grab a rail before floating helplessly. Then the rotation system compensated. Gravity returned, uneven but present. The station survived. The alien logic matrix did not. Smoke curled from the interface. The AI was gone. The Cathari observation ship immediately reacted. Station EOS 17, you have destroyed classified technology. Explain immediately. Ethan wiped blood from his lip and laughed. I saved a life, he said. You can bill me later. The ship fell silent. Lirai screamed again. This time, it was different. Not pain. Fear. Ethan ran to her side. Her body shook violently, glowing lines flashing erratically. Her hands clenched, fingers digging into the bed. I can feel them, she said. Every Cathari mind. All of them. The boundary is collapsing.
Ethan understood. Renewal was not just biological.
It was collective. Her species survived by sharing memory, emotion, instinct. Isolation was meant to limit the spread. The station's systems had amplified the signal instead. Okay, Ethan said, forcing calm. Then we cut the signal. You cannot, Lirai said. It is not technological, Ethan thought fast. Everything biological still runs on energy, he said. Signals, patterns, feedback. He moved to the power distribution board and began rerouting energy again. Not to stabilize, but to disrupt. He introduced noise, random fluctuations, unpredictable surges, imperfect timing. Human chaos. The effect was immediate. Lirai gasped as the overwhelming presence faded. The glowing lines dimmed again, pulsing unevenly. No longer synchronized, Ethan collapsed beside her, breathing hard. That shouldn't have worked, she whispered. It shouldn't have failed, he replied. The observation ship scanned again. Its sensors recorded something unprecedented. The renewal convergence was breaking. Not completing. Not collapsing. Adapting. Across Cathari space, distant individuals felt it. A ripple of confusion passed through their collective consciousness. Ancient patterns faltered. For the first time in recorded history, renewal did not follow tradition. And at the center of it was a human, bleeding, exhausted, refusing to let systems, biological or political, decide who lived and who didn't. The galaxy had believed humans were fragile. Now it was beginning to understand a deeper truth. Humans were disruptive, and disruption was dangerous. The 16th day did not belong to the station anymore. It belonged to the galaxy. Ethan realized this when the external sensors came back online without his command. He had left them offline on purpose. Too many unknown scans, too many hidden signals. But now the screens lit up on their own, flooding the control room with data. Ships, not one. Not two, dozens. They appeared at the edge of sensor range, emerging from folded space like silent shadows. Their designs were unmistakable. Sleek silver hulls marked with Cathari insignia. Angular escorts from allied species. Observation craft, medical frigates, and one large command vessel. They brought the council, Ethan muttered. Lyrae stood beside him, leaning heavily against the wall. Her movements were slow now, careful, as if gravity itself was uncertain. The glowing lines on her skin were dimmer but unstable, flickering like dying stars. "They should not be here," she said.
"This violates every renewal law. They violated it the moment they decided to watch instead of help," Ethan replied. A transmission request appeared on the screen.
"Priority override." Lyrae closed her eyes briefly. "If they take control now, they will separate us. They will sedate me."
"You will be removed." "And the renewal?" Ethan asked.
"They will force it to completion," she said quietly, "or erase the anomaly." Ethan understood what she meant. Erase could mean many things. He did not like any of them. The transmission activated without waiting for consent. A tall Cathari figure appeared on the screen, draped in ceremonial markings. His expression was controlled, calm, and cold. "Lyrae of the Cathari," the figure said. "You are ordered to stand down. Human presence has compromised the renewal." Ethan stepped into view. Funny, you watching from a distance didn't help much either. The figure's eyes narrowed slightly. "Human engineer, you have exceeded your authority." "Story of my life," Ethan replied. Lyrae raised a trembling hand. "Elder Koresh," she said. "The renewal has changed." "That is impossible," Koresh replied immediately. Ethan leaned closer to the screen. "You might want to check your own data before saying that." For the first time, the elder hesitated. Scans from the observation fleet began updating rapidly. Energy fluctuations, neural resonance shifts, pattern divergence spreading through Cathari space. The renewal was no longer isolated to the station. It was echoing outward. "This anomaly is spreading," Koresh said slowly. "No," Lyrae corrected. "It is adapting." Koresh's voice hardened. "Adaptation without control is chaos." Ethan crossed his arms. "Welcome to the human experience." Behind the elder, other figures moved, whispering urgently. Advisors, scientists, political leaders. Fear crept into the edges of their perfect composure. "You must allow intervention," Koresh said. "We will dock and take custody of the subject." "No," Lyrae said. The word was quiet but firm. Silence followed. "You do not understand what you are refusing," Koresh said. "I understand perfectly," Lyrae replied. "You are afraid because the renewal no longer obeys tradition." Ethan glanced at her, surprised. She met his eyes. "And you are right. That frightens them." The station shuddered again. Not violently this time, but deeply, like something stretching after long sleep. The manual systems Ethan had installed held steady. The chaos he introduced kept the feedback loops from forming again. Human mess. Human balance. The fleet began maneuvering closer. "They're preparing to board," Ethan said. "You must leave," Lyrae said softly. "If they find you here, they'll arrest me, blacklist me, or worse," Ethan finished. "Yeah." "I know." "You cannot fight them," she said. Ethan looked around the broken control room. Exposed wires. Analog dials, handwritten notes taped to panels. "I'm not fighting them," he said. "I'm buying time." He rerouted power again, not to shields or weapons, but to the communication array. He stripped out encryption, protocol filters, translation layers. Then he did something no one expected. He opened the signal. To everyone. Cathari space. Allied systems. Independent observers. Civilian networks. Raw data poured out. Medical readings. Neural scans. Station logs. Visual feeds of Larai struggling, stabilizing, surviving. And Ethan working beside her. "You can't do that," Larai said, shocked. "Watch me," Ethan replied. Elder Koresh shouted over the open channel, "Terminate that broadcast immediately!" Ethan leaned into the camera. His face was bruised, his eyes were bloodshot. He looked exhausted and human. "You isolated your people because you were afraid of what renewal could do," he said. "You called it tradition. We call that neglect." The feed spread fast. Other species watched in stunned silence. Even Cathari civilians saw something they had never been allowed to see. Renewal was not a sacred personal trial. It was a medical crisis. And it did not have to be faced alone. Fleet commanders hesitated. Boarding orders stalled. "Ethan," Larai whispered. "If this continues, there will be consequences for both of us." "Yeah," he said quietly. "But maybe they'll be different consequences." The station trembled again. This time, Larai screamed, not in pain, but in release. Ethan turned to her in alarm. "What's happening?" she gasped, gripping the bed. "The pressure is easing." "The convergence. It's passing." Her neural readings stabilized rapidly. Heart rate slowed. The glowing lines faded to a soft shimmer. The renewal storm was breaking. But this time, it did not leave destruction behind. It left clarity. Across the fleet, sensors confirmed it. "The renewal peak has passed," one advisor whispered, "without isolation." Elder Koresh stared at the data, shaken. "That should not be possible," he said. Ethan exhaled slowly. "It is if you stop pretending suffering is a virtue." The fleet went silent. Minutes passed. Finally, Koresh spoke again. His voice changed. Not softer. Heavier. "You have altered something ancient," he said. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "Humans do that." The command vessel powered down its boarding arrays. Medical frigates repositioned, not to dock, but to observe. Larai slumped back onto the bed, exhausted, but alive. Her eyes met Ethan's. "I will never be allowed to forget this," she said. He smiled weakly. "Neither will I." Outside, the fleet slowly adjusted formation, no longer predatory, no longer distant. Curious, cautious, afraid. The galaxy had tried to control renewal with distance and silence. A human had broken that silence. And now, nothing would ever return to the way it was before. The final consequences were coming. And they would not be small. The 17th day began with light, not the harsh white glare of emergency systems or the dim glow of failing power, but soft, steady illumination. For the first time since the lockdown, the station felt calm. Not empty, not broken. Calm. Ethan woke up on the floor of the control room, his back against the wall. Every muscle ached. His head felt heavy, like it was filled with wet sand. For a few seconds, he forgot where he was. Then, memory returned. All at once, the renewal, the fleet, the broadcast. He pushed himself upright slowly and checked the panels around him. Systems were still running, though at low output. Manual controls held steady. The ugly, human-made solutions were still doing their job. He exhaled.
Okay, he murmured, still alive. In the medical wing, Lyrae was awake.
She stood near the observation window, looking out at the stars. Her posture was different now.
Not tense. Not braced for pain.
Just tired and thoughtful. The glowing lines on her skin were almost gone, visible only as faint traces beneath the surface.
You should still be resting,
Ethan said as he entered. She turned toward him. I am resting, just not sleeping. How do you feel? She considered the question carefully. Complete, for the first time since my first renewal. Ethan nodded slowly.
That sounds good. It is, she said, and frightening.
Before he could respond, the station received another transmission request. This one was different. Open channel. No override. No command codes. Ethan looked at Lyrae. Your call. She straightened and nodded once.
Open it.
The image that appeared was not Elder Koresh. It was a council chamber. Multiple species filled the screen. Cathari elders, allied representatives, medical authorities, civilian observers, even a few human diplomats, their expressions unreadable as they took in the damaged station behind Ethan. A Cathari medical director spoke first. Lyrae of the Cathari, your neural readings indicate the renewal has ended. Yes, Lyrae replied, without isolation, without loss.
A murmur spread through the chamber. The director continued. This contradicts all established models.
Ethan crossed his arms.
So did flight once. A few human representatives smiled faintly.
Another Cathari elder leaned forward. The broadcast you authorized has caused unrest. Lyrae did not look away. It caused truth. The chamber went quiet. Finally, Elder Koresh appeared, standing apart from the others. He looked older than before, not in years, but in weight. You have disrupted a cornerstone of Cathari culture, he said. Yes, Lyrae replied, because it was harming us. Koresh's gaze shifted to Ethan. And you, human engineer. You violated containment law, destroyed classified technology, and interfered with a sacred process. Ethan shrugged. I fixed what was breaking. Koresh studied him for a long moment. Why? Ethan answered without hesitation. Because someone was suffering, and I was there. Silence followed. Then something unexpected happened. Koresh inclined his head slightly.
A human answer, he said. Direct.
Uncomfortable. The council chamber erupted into quiet discussion. Medical data scrolled across shared displays. Comparisons. Projections. Models rewriting themselves in real time. Across Cathari space, reports flooded in. Others were feeling it. Renewal waves were shifting. Individuals reported clarity instead of overload, pain instead of collapse, survival instead of loss. Isolation protocols were no longer holding. They were unraveling. A human diplomat finally spoke.
It appears that human presence acts as a stabilizing variable. The Cathari medical director looked stunned.
That makes no sense. Ethan leaned closer to the camera.
We evolved on a planet that never stopped trying to kill us. Instability feels normal to us.
One by one, the council members began to understand. Human biology did not resist chaos. It absorbed it, adapted to it, balanced inside it. Lyrae spoke again, her voice steady. Renewal does not need solitude. It needs grounding. Connection. Shared burden. Koresh closed his eyes briefly. Our ancestors believed suffering alone was strength. Sometimes, Ethan said gently, it's just suffering. The council recessed for deliberation. Minutes passed, then an hour. Ethan sat on the floor, too tired to stand. Lerai remained by the window, watching the fleet outside. Ships held position, no longer threatening, no longer distant, waiting. Finally, the council returned. Elder Koresh spoke for them. By unanimous decision, he said, the Cathari will suspend mandatory isolation during renewal for further study. Lerai inhaled sharply. The process will be overseen with medical support, Koresh continued.
Including human participation, where appropriate.
Ethan blinked. Wait, seriously? Koresh met his gaze. You have shown us something we refuse to see. The elder's expression hardened slightly. However, actions have consequences.
Ethan sighed.
Knew that part was coming. You will not be punished, Koresh said. You will be documented. Ethan frowned. That sounds worse. A living variable, Koresh continued. A reference point. A reminder. Lerai looked at Ethan, her eyes wide. They are changing the records. Yes, Koresh said. History will mark this renewal as the divergence. The transmission ended. The station fell quiet again. Ethan laughed softly, the sound half relief, half disbelief. Well, guess I'm famous. Lerai turned toward him. You changed my people. We changed them, Ethan corrected. She shook her head. No. You stayed when tradition said you should leave. He stood slowly, joints aching. Someone had to. Rescue arrived hours later. This time, docking permission was granted. Human and Cathari medical teams entered the station together. They stared openly at the manual systems, the exposed wires, the patched-together solutions. One human medic whistled. This thing shouldn't still be flying. Ethan smiled, tiredly. Yeah. But it is! Lerai was escorted out last. As she passed through the airlock, she paused and looked back at the station. It will be remembered, she said. For almost killing us? Ethan asked. For surviving us, she replied. As they boarded the command vessel, the wider galaxy took note. Reports spread quickly. Humans were not just adaptable. They were stabilizers. Where alien systems collapsed under biological or environmental extremes, humans functioned. Where tradition failed, humans improvised. Where others isolated suffering, humans shared it. New doctrines were written. Human advisors were requested. Human engineers were reassigned to biological disaster zones. Human presence became a variable no model could ignore. As for Ethan Hale, he was offered promotions, titles, and honors. He declined most of them. He accepted one thing. A new assignment. To help redesign renewal protocols across Cathari space. Not as a hero, not as a savior. Just as a human who stayed. And somewhere in the vast, watching galaxy, a quiet understanding settled in. Never underestimate a species that evolved in chaos. Never dismiss a people who solve problems by refusing to walk away. Humanity did not conquer the stars. It endured them. And that made all the difference.